So it's the middle of winter. Snow has been falling, it's cold as the dickens outside, whatever that phrase actually means. So why not start off my really late first review of 2022 talking about a game that makes you shiver even more, both from the cold and from atmospheric horror? Well, that's Cryostasis for you. Cryostasis is a game that I bought many moons ago on Steam and has sadly been delisted since. It's a first-person shooter released in 2008 in which you play an unknown man that scouts out a Russian nuclear submarine that had hit an iceberg and run aground. Your reasons for looking for and boarding the sub are unknown to me, but it might be in the manual. And there are two parallel storylines that are going on. One of a tale of centuries ago about a bunch of peaceful natives that had to leave their homeland and travel through a poisonous forest due to the threat of nearing tribes, but then blame their leader for marching them into a certain death. At the same time, the other storyline is about the sub itself, and its crew losing faith in their aging captain and his old-school methods of piloting. As you play through the game, you'll find notes and photos on yellowed parchment paper that will unwind the story further for you. The whole game, other than maybe the first intro scenes, all take place aboard the ship. Since it's been non-functional, and how it's also in the middle of the Arctic, it's freaking cold! The whole premise of Cryostasis uses this freezing atmosphere as its central mechanic. Both the atmosphere of the game and the gameplay itself take different aspects of this to fuse together a very interesting experience. First off, I want to talk about the combat. At first, you only get access to a few melee weapons, such as a lock and chain wrapped around your fist, a valve that you can use as a bludgeon, or a fire axe. But eventually, you'll also start picking up some firearms, all of Russian variety, such as the Mosin rifle or the drum-fed PPSH-41. Combat isn't what I would call frequent, as there's a lot of walking around through empty rooms. However, it will occur, and when it does, you'll have to be ready. Your character doesn't seem to be a war hero, or even a firearms expert in general. Firing and reloading are slow and methodical. Swinging your fists in a punch is fine, but don't expect any elaborate combos. If you hold two directional keys down at the same time and punch, though, he'll throw a two-way attack, but that's really the most you get. The system works, and actually helps lead to the atmosphere I keep talking about, and will elaborate on, well, now. As you can probably tell, the ship is coated in frost, ice, and snow. Icicles hang from almost everywhere, and in the times you run outside, you'll encounter blizzard-like conditions. Your screen will begin to freeze up in the corners, and your weapon may even show some heavy snow or frost on it, depending on the situations. It's all amazing to behold, and there were a few times where I subconsciously shivered a bit while playing the game. Dramatic? Maybe, but it's the truth. With all of this, the game takes an interesting approach to your health. The gauge in the bottom left of the screen functions as your stamina, health, and overall temperature of the area. In order to heal, you have to find a heat source, typically a space heater, a light bulb, or a smoldering fire, and right-click in order to bring out your hands to warm up. You can replenish your health to the level of the heat dispensed from that device. When leaving the warmth of that room, your health will slowly decrease back down to dangerous levels, so you'll always want to be on the lookout for a way to warm up. Your stamina also gets replenished by these sources. However, stamina feels kinda lackluster, simply because running doesn't speed you up too much. First off, the stamina gauge is almost useless, but as you progress through the game and interact with the corpses you'll encounter, your stamina will have a higher limit. It's just a shame that you run so slowly that it really doesn't speed you up enough to make it worth it. Plus, it recovers so slowly on its own that using heat sources seems to be the only viable way of getting your stamina back to a usable state. In general, it's not just the running that's slow, but your overall movement is slow as well. It actually doesn't bother me though. It helps lead to an almost adventure style of gameplay, and it really does feel like exploration of the ship takes the forefront over the combat, even if the game is completely linear. Back to those corpses that I mentioned. You'll find some of them that can be interacted with, signified by that red glow from their body. By doing this, you are using what the game calls the mental echo. You'll dive into the corpse's memory to find out how the person died, and attempt to circumvent this. Most of the time, doing this is required to alter the current day. Most of these mental echoes are essentially puzzles, forcing you to look around and see what the person did wrong, and correct it. You have unlimited attempts at these, so if something didn't work, you can do something else to try again. However, some of these are very cryptic, such as this one where you can leave the room and explore a bit, but come to find out all you have to do is sit there and duck behind the chair. Others are easy, such as this one in which you literally just let a bunch of cattle escape so that one of the hanging corpses doesn't fall and crush you. It's never really explained why your character has a supernatural ability, but again, video game logic, I suppose. I mean, you are fighting humanoid creatures that may resemble the rest of the ship's crew. At least, I think you are. The enemies you encounter range from normal enemies that slowly lumber towards you, to firearm-wielding thugs that seem to forget how to hold their weapon, as the recoil from their shots practically flings their arms backwards. But then you also have the other, shall we say, odder enemies. Perhaps the one that crawls around like a spider using icicles as legs? Or maybe the one that clangs around as it is engulfed in metal-like materials. Perhaps the most unnerving, and probably because of the siren-like sound that you hear when it appears, is the creature in the overcoat with double machine guns. It's a tank that's going to require a lot of bullets to put down, but whenever that siren is blared, you know crap's about to hit the fan. Hope you know where the nearest heat source is. For a horror game, Cryostasis does a fairly good job at setting the mood. Jump scares are kept to a minimum, and instead, Cryostasis focuses on psychological sort of horror. It uses the world to keep you on the edge of your seat, curious to know what's around the next corner, through the next door. The door in the cabinet that just swung open. Is it a heater inside, or an enemy just laying in wait? Going outside, are you going to have enough body heat to make that sprint to the next door? And what was that flying thing that just buzzed right by me? And all of that without gore. There is absolutely no blood in the game that I can recall, as enemies being struck just show a weird orange mark, almost like a scorch mark. I guess this makes sense considering that one of the weapons just sprays boiling water directly in front of you, and it actually does a great job at felling enemies if you don't mind them getting a bit close. Anyway, the mood is set perfectly, and it really does a good job at hooking you in. That is, if you can get the game to run. Cryostasis is a notoriously difficult game to get running on modern computers. When I first bought it, I couldn't even really play it, as the frame rate dropped so dramatically that it was literally unplayable. A few graphics cards later, I was finally able to play and complete it. However, for this review, the game crashes frequently, especially in the second half of the game. So that's going to be something that you will have to get used to. I think that's all I can really say about Cryostasis. It's an interesting game, that's for sure, but it does have technical flaws that can prevent enthusiastic players from fully completing it. But other than that, the world is moody with the snow and ice, combat is slow but competent, as is the overall progression of the game. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be available on any sort of digital storefront anymore, so methods that are similar in terms of seafaring debauchery may be the only way to truly experience the game anymore, if you get what I'm saying. If the game looks interesting to you, I'd say give it a go, but be prepared for some frequent crashes. Final score? 5 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.